Dr. Dre is one of the most legendary producers in rap history. Even though he changed the sound of hip-hop forever and discovered some of the greatest rappers of all time, a lot of fans still don't know his full story. From getting threatened by the FBI to selling his company for $3 billion, today we're breaking down the full story of Dr. Dre, including all classic records, beefs, fights, business ventures, and more. Dre was born on February 18, 1965, in the city of Compton, California. In the 50s and 60s, Compton was a nice area, and a lot of middle-class black families moved there to avoid crime in downtown LA. But in the 70s and 80s, the neighborhood started to take a turn. The Crips and Bloods were taking over, and robberies, shootings, and murders were happening every day. Growing up in Compton at that time, Dre had a pretty rough childhood. Dre's parents, Theodore and Vera Young, were still teenagers when they had him. Dre was always around music from an early age, and his dad Theodore was in an amateur R&B group called the Romels. Theodore even gave Dre the middle name Romel after the group. But even though he introduced his son to music, he didn't give him much else, cause Theodore wasn't around much during Dre's childhood. Dre's parents split up not long after he was born, and Dre was mostly raised by his mother and grandmother. Dre's family moved around to a bunch of different cities and neighborhoods in the LA area, including Long Beach, Watts, and South Central. But he mostly stayed with his grandmother in the New Wilmington Arms housing projects in Compton. Dre was close to his mom and siblings, especially his brother Tyree. Money was tight and the family was pretty poor growing up, but Dre was always ambitious, and growing up in the hood gave him the drive to get successful and make it out. Even though he saw crime and violence all around him, Dre never joined a gang. Dre's mom always told him that most gang members were cowards, so Dre wanted to find a way to be successful without being in the streets. Dre was always into music and looked up to legends like Isaac Hayes, George Clinton, and Quincy Jones. In high school, he started making his own beats and DJing parties for friends and family members. Dre was normally a pretty shy dude, but when he got behind the turntables, he knew how to get any party going. So he started gaining a reputation as one of the best DJs in Compton. As he got older, Dre realized that school wasn't for him and he wanted to focus on music. Dre had to transfer from Centennial High in Compton to Fremont High in South Central because of bad grades. He also tried to do an apprenticeship program at the Northrop Aviation Company, but his bad grades kept him out of the program. Dre knew he didn't have the grades to go to college, so he started focusing more on his social life and building his music career. In 1983, Dre joined a group called the World Class Wrecking Crew. The World Class Wrecking Crew made music that was closer to funk and electronic than rap, but it also included a future NWA member, DJ Yella, and the singer Michel'le, who later signed to Eazy-E's Ruthless Records. The World Class Wrecking Crew used to perform at a club in Compton called Eve After Dark, which was owned by a famous West Coast DJ named Alonzo Williams. Being part of a group and working at a poppin' nightclub made Dre one of the hottest DJs in Compton. He wasn't just DJing at house parties anymore. Dre was getting serious exposure and building a name for himself in the city. But music still wasn't paying the bills, and Dre was getting pressure from his mom to either get a job or go back to school. Dre tried going to the Chester Adult School in Compton and even tried to get into radio broadcasting, but Dre knew that music was the only thing he wanted to do, so he put all his energy into performing and making beats. Eve After Dark had a small studio in the back, so Dre and DJ Yella started using it to record their early demos. During one of the sessions, they recorded a song called Surgery, which they released with the rest of the World Class Wrecking Crew. Surgery became a local hit and sold 50,000 copies in the Compton area, making the World Class Wrecking Crew one of the biggest groups in the underground scene. Even though they were getting attention, Dre still wasn't happy with the direction his career was going. Dre wanted to make music that was harder and more real, but the World Class Wrecking Crew had a pop sound, and they were known for wearing tight outfits with makeup and rocking jerry curls. Alonzo Williams was the group's manager and wanted them to be more mainstream. Dre didn't like that he had no control over their sound or image, so he decided to leave the World Class Wrecking Crew in '86 to start a new label with his homie Eazy-E. Eazy-E was a well-known drug dealer in Compton who was a member of the Kelly Park Compton Crips. At 22, Eazy had already made over $250,000 from selling drugs, but after he saw his cousin get killed, Eazy realized he needed to get out of the streets and wanted to start a career as a rapper. Eazy started making tracks in his parents' garage, but realized he needed a real manager and producer if he wanted to make it in the rap game. Eazy was friends with Alonzo Williams and knew he had a lot of connections in the music industry, so Eazy offered Alonzo $750 to introduce him to a dude named Jerry Heller. Jerry Heller was a famous music manager who had worked with big names like Marvin Gaye and Black Sabbath. Jerry used to go into Eve After Dark to look for new talent, so he already had a relationship with Alonzo. Eazy convinced Alonzo to introduce him to Jerry. When they met, Eazy asked Jerry for his help starting this new record label, Ruthless Records. At first, Jerry wasn't sure, but after hearing one of Eazy's demo tapes, he agreed to be his manager and helped him set up Ruthless Records. Eazy had a manager with ties to the industry, but he still needed a producer who could help him make real records. That's when Eazy got the idea to link up with Dr. Dre. Eazy knew Dre as one of the most popular DJs in Compton. Dre used to make mixtapes and sell them at the Compton swap meet with a dude named Steve Yano. Eazy ended up buying one of the tapes and realized that was the exact sound he wanted. When he found out it was Dre who made the beats, Eazy convinced Steve to connect them, and that's when Eazy asked Dre to become part of Ruthless Records. Dre was already mad about his lack of control over the world-class Wrecking Crew, so working with Eazy seemed like the perfect opportunity. Eazy was willing to provide all the funding, and Dre would be in charge of all the creative work. So Dre ditched the world-class Wrecking Crew and joined Ruthless Records. Around the same time, Dre also met a rapper from South Central named Ice Cube. Dre's cousin was also a rapper named Sir Jinx, who lived down the street from Ice Cube. When they were in high school, Ice Cube and Sir Jinx started a crew called Crew in Action, or CIA. Dre came over one day and heard Ice Cube rapping. He liked what he heard, so Dre started inviting CIA to perform at parties he was DJing at. Dre also helped CIA record their first single, She's a Skag, which got them a deal with Epic Records, but the single didn't sell enough copies, so CIA got dropped from the label pretty fast. Dre still saw a lot of potential in Ice Cube, so when he started working with Eazy-E, Dre invited Ice Cube to come out to the studio and work as a writer. At the time, Eazy didn't want to be in the spotlight and was focused on just managing artists and running the label. Eazy found a group called Homeboys Only and paid Ice Cube to write a song for him. Ice Cube ended up writing the track Boys in the Hood. Eazy's group, Homeboys Only, passed on the song because they didn't understand the lingo and West Coast style. But Ice Cube and Dre knew it could be a hit, so they convinced Eazy to record it himself. Ruthless Records was quickly growing from just Eazy and Dre into a larger group. Dre brought Ice Cube on board, along with another producer named Arabian Prince and his homie from World Class Wrecking Crew, DJ Yella. Eazy also recruited his homie MC Ren, who was also a member of the Kelly Park Crips. They needed a name for their new group, so they started going by Niggas with Attitude, or NWA. NWA's debut album, Straight Outta Compton, dropped in August 1988. The album spoke on street life, gang violence, and police brutality in a way that had never been done before. Even though it got almost no radio play because of its violent lyrics, Straight Outta Compton was a huge success and sold 500,000 copies in the first year. That brought the album to number 9 on the Billboard chart, even though it was banned on most mainstream radio stations. It was one of the rawest rap albums fans had ever heard, and kicked down the door for the new genre of gangster rap. Straight Outta Compton also helped shed some light on West Coast hip-hop. New York was always seen as the birthplace of rap and a place where all the new trends started, but after Straight Outta Compton dropped, fans started taking West Coast hip-hop a lot more seriously. Even though the project was a huge success, not everyone was a fan. Straight Outta Compton made NWA one of the most controversial groups in music, and they had a hard time getting real support from the industry. They even got a warning letter from the FBI over the song Fuck the Police. On the track, Ice Cube raps, "Fuck the police coming straight from the underground. A young nigga got it bad cause I'm brown, and not the other color. So police think they have the authority to kill a minority." But instead of backing down, NWA used it to help their image and started calling themselves the most dangerous group in the world. So by 24, Dr. Dre was finally rich. He was able to buy all the things he couldn't afford growing up, and all the women were throwing themselves at him. NWA went out on the road and the party never stopped. They found out they had a huge fan base all over the country, including a lot of white fans, and they were selling out shows everywhere they went. But even though they were finally living their dreams, things back home in Compton were still just as bad. While they were out on tour, Dre got the tragic news that his half-brother Tyree had been killed in a street fight. Tyree got into an argument with a dude on Crenshaw Boulevard, and the fight got physical. The other dude slammed Tyree on the ground, and he ended up breaking his neck and passing away. The death was ruled a murder, but the case is still unsolved. Tyree was the second brother Dre had lost. Dre's younger brother Jerome also died of pneumonia when he was only a year old, but Tyree's death hit differently because they grew up together and had a close relationship. Dre was finally living the high life, but even being a rich celebrity couldn't protect his family from what was going on in Compton. If losing a brother wasn't bad enough, Dre also started losing his friends and business partners too after NWA fell apart. Arabian Prince was the first member of NWA to leave the group after he realized they were getting scammed. According to Arabian Prince, he started out as a solo artist and had some experience in the industry as a producer, so he knew how the music business was supposed to work. Every quarter, you're supposed to get a royalty statement showing how many records were sold and how much each member was supposed to get, but with NWA, that never happened. Arabian Prince also realized that he never got paid from touring. When Arabian Prince asked Eazy about the money, Eazy told him to ask Jerry Heller, but when he asked Jerry, Jerry told Arabian Prince to ask Eazy. They kept going back and forth until Arabian Prince finally got fed up and decided to leave the group. When Arabian Prince first told Ice Cube he was leaving, Ice Cube thought it was crazy. They were one of the biggest rap groups in the world, and they were selling out shows across the country. But Arabian Prince said it was strictly business. They were getting chased by the police, getting in fights at shows, and he wasn't even getting paid for it. At one of their shows in Detroit, they made it 30 seconds into Fuck the Police before someone started letting off shots in the crowd. They all tried to run off stage, but a line of cops were waiting for them, and all the NWA ended up getting arrested and thrown on the ground in handcuffs. So it wasn't worth all the trouble, and Arabian Prince decided it was time to make moves for himself. NWA continued on with just Ice Cube, Eazy-E, and MC Ren as the main performers, while Dr. Dre and DJ Yella were the DJs. But it wouldn't take long for other members to start leaving the group too. Ice Cube started to see Arabian Prince's point after he worked on Eazy-E's first album, Eazy Does It. Ice Cube wrote a bunch of songs on Eazy Does It, but when it came time to get paid, he only got a check for $32,000. Around that time, Jerry was also pushing everyone in the group to sign new contracts. Cube wanted to have his own lawyer look over it, but Jerry kept being shady and wouldn't let anyone else read the paperwork. Jerry offered Ice Cube $75,000 if he agreed to renew the contract without getting lawyers involved. But Cube felt like he wasn't getting the money he was worth and decided not to sign. Ice Cube leaving was a major loss for NWA. He was one of the main faces of the group and also helped write everyone else's raps. But Cube also thought he wasn't getting paid for all the work he was putting in, so Cube felt like he had no choice but to walk away. Dre couldn't understand why Ice Cube decided to leave. At the time, all Dre cared about was the music. They were all making hits together, so Dre didn't get why Ice Cube was letting money get in the way. Plus, they were all like brothers. Dre had just lost his real brother and felt like Ice Cube betrayed him when he was already down. When Ice Cube left the group, he thought there would be no hard feelings and everyone would understand that it was strictly business, but the rest of NWA didn't feel the same way. They made that clear when they dropped their next EP, 100 Miles and Running, which had shots at Ice Cube. On the song 100 Miles and Running, Dre raps, "Clouds are dark and brothers are hiding. Dick trickling at the sunny motherfuckers are riding. Started with 5 and yo, 1 couldn't take it. So now it's 4 cause the 5th couldn't make it. The number's even, now I'm leaving." This was clearly a shot at Ice Cube, who was the 5th member of NWA. So Dre was saying Ice Cube left the group because he couldn't handle all the pressure. Dre took another shot at Ice Cube on the track Real Niggas, where he rapped, "We started out with too much cargo, so I'm glad we got rid of Benedict Arnold." In this bar, Dre was calling Ice Cube a Benedict Arnold or a traitor for leaving the group, but also claimed he didn't care because to him, Ice Cube was nothing but dead weight. Ice Cube was surprised by the disses because he thought it was all just business when he left the group. But after his old homie started dissing him, Ice Cube clapped back at them. Ice Cube dropped an EP called Kill at Will. On the song Jackin' for Beats, Ice Cube responded to the diss on 100 Miles and Running, rapping, "And if I jack ya and you keep coming, I'll have you marching 100 miles and running." There was also a skit on the outro. Someone asked Ice Cube about NWA on the phone call and he immediately hung up. It was a pretty minor diss, but that was enough to turn things up a notch. Eazy-E and other members of NWA started dissing Ice Cube in interviews, claiming he wasn't really from the streets, and jacked his whole image from them. When NWA's next album, Niggas for Life, came out, it was full of shots at Ice Cube. Dre took a direct shot at Ice Cube on the song Always Into Something and rapped, 1, 2, 3, then I see a nigga. Hop in the fence, and it was right on the motherfucking trigger. He got in the Benz and said, "Dre, I was speaking to your bitch O'Shea." Ice Cube's real name is O'Shea Jackson, so Dre was letting it be known exactly how he felt about his former homie. The album also included an entire skit dedicated to dissing Ice Cube. The Message to B.A. interlude is a reference to Dre calling Ice Cube Benedict Arnold on 100 Miles and Running. In the interlude, Dre plays answering machine messages where different people call in just to diss Ice Cube and call him a punk. The disrespect was getting out of control, so Ice Cube felt like he had to respond and ended up recording one of the wildest diss tracks in rap history. In October 1991, Ice Cube dropped his second album, Death Certificate. The final song on the project was a brutal NWA diss track called No Vaseline. This time, Cube was done with the light shots and went all in dissing Dr. Dre and the rest of NWA. On the track, Ice Cube raps, "Real niggas, them niggas Dre and Yella used to wear lipstick and lace. Here's what they think about you. Why y'all let his punk ass in the group?" Ice Cube was referencing the NWA song Real Niggas while making fun of Dr. Dre and DJ Yella for wearing makeup and tight clothes back when they were in the World Class Wrecking Crew. Ice Cube was also responding to the Message to B.A. interlude and claiming that Dr. Dre is the real punk, not him. Cube took more shots at Dre and the rest of the crew later on the song, rapping, Yellow Boy's on your team, so you're losing. Hey yo, Dre, stick to producing. Calling me Arnold, but you been a dick. Eazy-E saw your ass and went in it quick. Ice Cube was responding to Dre calling him Benedict Arnold. He was also warning him to stick to producing, because according to Cube, Dre can't compete with him when it comes to rapping. Ice Cube also calls him all out for getting scammed by Eazy-E and Jerry Heller, rapping, "Half pint bitch, fucking your homeboys, you little maggot." Eazy-E turned with your manager, fella, fucking MC Ren, Dr. Dre, and Yella. But if they were smart as me, Eazy-E would be hanging from a tree with No Vaseline. No Vaseline was a wild record that's now considered one of the greatest diss tracks of all time. Ice Cube responded to every shot NWA had taken at him since he left the group, but came with 10 times more aggression. No Vaseline was so savage that NWA never even responded as a group because the crew started to fall apart not long after. In January 1991, Dr. Dre was involved in a huge scandal after he assaulted a journalist named Dee Barnes outside a record release party in Hollywood. Dee Barnes was the host of a hip-hop show called Pump It Up. NWA had done an interview with Dee Barnes after they dropped their EP, 100 Miles and Running, where they dissed Ice Cube. According to Dee, there was bad energy during that NWA interview, and everything they said felt like a diss about Ice Cube. After the interview was taped, the producers decided to combine it with another interview Dee had done with Ice Cube. In the interview, Ice Cube dissed NWA and made fun of the DOC's voice. The DOC had been in a serious car accident that almost killed him and changed his voice forever, so it was a pretty low blow from Ice Cube. The DOC was a close friend of Dr. Dre. When he saw that the producers at Pump It Up decided to run the interview side by side to cause more drama, it didn't sit right with Dre. So when he ran into Dee Barnes at a record release party, he decided to confront her. According to Dee Barnes, when Dre saw her, he grabbed her by the hair and started slamming her head against a brick wall near a stairwell. Dre was attacking her in front of a big group of people, but his bodyguard was holding everyone off by waving his gun around. Dre tried to throw Dee down the stairs, but when he couldn't, he started kicking her in the stomach and ribs. She managed to get up and run into the women's bathroom, but Dre chased her inside, grabbed her by the hair, and started punching her in the back of the head. Then, Dre and his bodyguard took off. According to Dee Barnes, running the NWA and Ice Cube interviews back to back wasn't even her idea, but Dre didn't want to hear it. Dee Barnes ended up pressing charges and also filed a $22 million lawsuit. Dre pled no contest to the charges and was hit with a $2,500 fine, plus 2 years of probation and 240 hours of community service. He also settled the lawsuit out of court and had to pay Dee Barnes for the assault, but nobody knows how much she ended up getting. Dre later admitted that he did attack Dee Barnes, but claimed she had it coming by trying to play him. Other members of NWA like MC Ren and DJ Yella also thought she had it coming, but the public didn't agree, and it was a huge scandal for NWA, who already had a bad reputation for being violent. Plus, Dee Barnes wasn't the only woman Dre allegedly assaulted. He was also in a pretty toxic relationship with Michel'le, the singer from World Class Wrecking Crew who followed Dre to Ruthless Records. Dre and Michel'le started dating in 1990, and a year later, they had a son named Marcel. They dated for about 6 years, and after they broke up, Michel'le claimed that Dre was abusive. Michel'le says that while they were together, Dre gave her 5 black eyes, dragged her on the floor by her hair, and even shot at her.
I had 5 black eyes.
5 black eyes?
Yes.
So you were getting punched in the face and
Oh, I was getting dragged on the floor, shot at, yeah.
Shot at?
Yeah.
At the time, she thought Dre loved her, so she didn't realize how bad it was. But after they broke up in '96, she started dating Dre's former business partner, Suge Knight. Even though that relationship was also pretty abusive, Michel'le says that Suge was the one who made her realize that Dre was out of control and should have never put his hands on her. Another one of Dre's artists, Terry B, also accused Dre of punching her at a Grammys after party. Terry B dropped her debut album, The Power of a Woman, on Ruthless in 1990, but she had a falling out with Dre and she recorded a diss track about him. When Dre saw her at the after party, Terry claims he punched her in the eye, and when she didn't fall down, he punched her in the mouth. Years later, Dre apologized to all the women he hurt and said he deeply regretted the way he acted back then. But at the time, he didn't feel the same way. Plenty of people spoke out against Dre, including Jerry Heller. In his book, Jerry said that Dre's behavior was disgraceful and said he had a drinking problem that made him turn violent. Jerry also said that he was forced to clean up the mess after it all went down. Dre and Jerry Heller never really got along, and it got even worse after what went down with Dee Barnes. Plus, Dre was starting to question Jerry's business tactics. Even though he dissed Ice Cube for leaving NWA, Dre was starting to realize he might have been right all along. Dre was getting tired of letting Eazy-E handle all the business. Dre wasn't just one of the faces of NWA, he also made all the beats and produced for all the other artists on Ruthless Records. So Dre felt like he should have been making a lot more than what he was getting. Jerry Heller always acted shady about the contracts. There was also a rumor that Eazy-E sold Jerry the rights to the NWA catalog so Eazy could keep more profits for himself. Dre was getting tired of having no control over the business, so he started making moves to start his own label. Dre had also gotten close to one of his bodyguards, who offered to be his new business partner, Suge Knight. Suge Knight was a dude from Compton who had a short career in the NFL, but after he was cut by the LA Rams, he started working as a bodyguard and concert promoter for artists like Bobby Brown. Suge had a business relationship with the DOC, who was also signed to Ruthless Records and worked with Dr. Dre. Suge and Dre met through the DOC and they started working together. At first, Suge was just Dre's security guard, but Suge had bigger plans and wanted Dre to leave Ruthless so they could start their own label. Suge saw what was going on with Eazy-E and Jerry Heller and convinced Dre he was getting played. Dre started to believe Suge was right, but he was still under contract and couldn't just walk away from the group. But Suge wouldn't take no for an answer. Suge already had a bad reputation in the music industry. He allegedly got his first big check after hanging Vanilla Ice upside down off a balcony just to make him sign over the rights to the track Ice Ice Baby. Suge had a client named Mario Johnson, who wrote some of Vanilla Ice's hit song Ice Ice Baby. Vanilla Ice never paid Mario, so Suge and his goons allegedly hung Vanilla Ice off a balcony at a hotel room until he agreed to write a check. That's how Suge got the money he planned to use to help Dre set up their new label. Vanilla Ice claims that Suge never actually hung him off a balcony, but admits that Suge did threaten him. Either way, Suge was already gaining a reputation in the music industry for using violence to get his way. Before they could start a new label, Dre needed to get out of his contract with Ruthless, so Suge used the same moves that worked with Vanilla Ice. Suge confronted Eazy-E and threatened to kill him if he didn't let Dre out of his contract. Suge allegedly pointed to a white van down the street and told Eazy that Jerry Heller was inside being tortured. Suge also said that if he didn't tear up the contract, Eazy's mother was next. Suge never actually tortured Jerry Heller, but he did threaten to kill him if he didn't release Dre. Eazy and Dre must have known Suge was being serious, because they agreed to let Dre, the DOC, and Michel'le out of their contracts so they could sign to their new label, Death Row Records. Dre was officially done with NWA. Without their main producer, the group fell apart, and Eazy-E, MC Ren, and DJ Yella all went on to focus on their solo careers. The way it all went down also started another wild beef between Dre and Eazy-E. Eazy ended up suing Dre for using threats to get out of his contract. They settled out of court, but Eazy basically won and got to keep a percentage of Dre's royalties as an artist and producer. So every time Dre dropped a record, Eazy got paid. That didn't stop Dre from dissing Eazy any chance he could get. They started by dissing each other in interviews. Eazy kept bringing up Dre's past in the World Class Wrecking Crew, and Dre reminded Eazy he was still controlled by Jerry Heller. Then in December 1992, Dre dropped his first solo album on Death Row Records, The Chronic. The album was an instant classic and had a ton of shots at Eazy-E. There's an entire Eazy-E diss record called Fuck With Dre Day, where Dre aired Eazy out and rapped, "Mr. Buster, where the fuck you at? Can't scrap a lick, so I know you got your gat. Yo dick on hard from fucking your road dogs. The hoods you grew up with, niggas you grew up with, don't even respect your ass. That's why it's time for the doctor to check your ass. Nigga, used to be my homie, used to be my ace. Now I wanna slap the taste out your mouth." In between verses, Dre also says, "We have your motherfucking record company surrounded. Put down the candy and let the little boy go. You know what I'm saying, punk motherfucker?" In the background, someone can be heard shouting, "We want Eazy, we want Eazy." But Dre wasn't the only one dissing. The Chronic was also full of features from Dre's new artists, Snoop Dogg. Dre first discovered Snoop after his stepbrother, Warren G, played him a cassette tape of Snoop's music at a party. Dre was looking for new talent after leaving NWA and wanted to start working with more artists so he can improve his production skills. After hearing Snoop's tape, Dre was blown away and wanted to meet him. So Warren G called Snoop and told him Dre wanted to set up a meeting. At first, Snoop thought he was being pranked and hung up the phone. Warren G called Snoop right back and offered to put Dre on the other line so they could talk directly. Once Dre got on the line, Snoop still didn't believe it was real. But after chopping it up for a few minutes, Snoop realized they were serious and went to the studio to link up with Dre. When Snoop got to the studio, Dre realized he had the potential to become a superstar. Dre put on a beat and Snoop started freestyling immediately. It was super smooth, even though he was rapping off the dome. That's when Dre got the idea to start making The Chronic and brought Snoop in to help him make the record. When the album finally came out, Snoop was featured on almost every song. including Fuck with Dre Day. Snoop was still new to Death Row and wanted to prove his loyalty to Dre, so he dissed Eazy-E in his verse, rapping, "So won't they let you know that if you fuck with Dre, nigga, you're fucking with Death Row? And I ain't even swinging them things. I'm hollering 187 with my dick in your mouth, biatch." Snoop also called out Eazy by name on the outro, saying, "All them sucker ass niggas can eat a fat dick. Yeah, Eazy-E, Eazy-E, Eazy-E can eat a big fat dick." That put Snoop right in the middle of Dre's beef with Eazy. To make it even more disrespectful, they also shot a video for the song with Eazy-E and Jerry Heller lookalikes. Dre also dissed Eazy again and called him by his legal name on the track Bitches Ain't Shit, where he raps, "I used to know a bitch named Eric Wright. We used to roll around and fuck the hoes at night." Dre's beef with Eazy helped him sell even more records. The album made it to number 3 on the Billboard chart and eventually went triple platinum after selling over 3 million copies. It created a whole new genre called G-Funk, which combined the sound of funk music with hip-hop and gangster rap. Today, The Chronic is considered one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time, but it wouldn't take long for Eazy-E to respond and take the beef to the next level. Eazy dropped a diss track called Real Motherfucking G's, where he questioned Dre's street cred. Eazy also reminded him that he got paid every time Dre dropped music, rapping, "Hey yo doctor, here's another proper track, and it's fat, watch the sniper, time to pay the piper, and let that real stuff provoke, so you'll wanna be low, and you'll get smoked, and I hope that the fans understand, when you talk about playing me, the same records that you making is paying me." Eazy also said fuck Dre, Snoop, and Death Row, and claimed that they didn't want smoke with a real gangster like him, rapping, "Damn E, they try to fade you on Dre Day, but Dre Day only meant Eazy's payday. All of a sudden, Dr. Dre is a G thing, but on his old album cover, he was a she thing. So sucker please, don't step to these real Compton City G's." It was a pretty wild diss, but Dre and Snoop started it with Fuck with Dre Day, so they must have known Eazy would respond. Eazy wasn't happy with just dropping one record. Dre must have really pissed him off, because Eazy decided to scrap the album he was working on just so he could send more shots at Dre. Before The Chronic dropped, Eazy was working on an album called Temporary Insanity, but after he heard Fuck with Dre Day, Eazy decided to stop what he was doing and record an entire EP just to diss Dre. Eazy dropped the project It's On, Dr. Dre, 187 on Killer in October 1993. The EP included Real Motherfucking G's, along with a few other disses about Dre. On the song It's On, Eazy raps, "Hey Mr. Prankster, storybook gangster. Back in 86, you wore the pumps and mascara. Down with the motherfucking wrecking crew, bitch. But once a bitch, it's always a bitch. And now the fucking switch. With stethoscope, now you sad. Body slamming bitches makes Dre a bigger man." So the beef was getting pretty personal. Eazy felt like he brought Dre into the game and gave him his start by inviting him to join Ruthless. But as soon as he left the group, Dre turned around and started acting like Eazy was soft, when it was Eazy's respecting the streets that helped NWA blow up. The 187 on Killer EP was a huge hit, and it was Eazy-E's most successful project. It sold over 110,000 copies in the first week and peaked at number 5 on the Billboard charts. Real Motherfucking G's was also the biggest single Eazy had in his career, so all the dissing was great for business and kept the fans entertained. But the beef wouldn't go much further than that, because Eazy-E never got the chance to release another album while he was alive. On February 24th, 1995, Eazy-E went to the hospital with a bad cough and never left. Eazy had been sick for a few months, but doctors weren't sure what was wrong. But that time, the doctors diagnosed him with AIDS. On March 16th, Eazy told fans he was fighting for his life. While he was in the hospital, Eazy was visited by everyone from NWA, including Ice Cube and Dr. Dre. By that point, Ice Cube and Eazy had already squashed their beef. Right before Eazy died, there were even rumors that an NWA reunion was in the works. Dre and Ice Cube would also squash their beef. Dre had been working on the soundtrack to a short film that was based on Snoop Dogg's first album, Murder Was the Case. He thought Ice Cube would be perfect for one of the songs, so Dre called him up out of the blue and asked Ice Cube to come through to the studio. The beef between Ice Cube and Dre was never even that serious. Dre was mostly upset that Ice Cube left the group when they were on top of the world. But over time, he started to realize why Cube had to walk away. Ice Cube also clearly won the battle and dissed Dre and the rest of NWA way harder on No Vaseline than they dissed him. So Ice Cube decided to let it go and went to the studio to link up with Dre. On the Howard Stern show, Ice Cube said he went over to the house and found Dre making beats by himself in the back room. He said it was awkward at first, but after a while, it felt like nothing happened. During that studio session, they made the track Natural Born Killers, which was the first time any former NWA members had worked on a song together since the breakup. So Ice Cube and Dre were already cool by the time Eazy-E was in the hospital, but Eazy and Dre hadn't spoken since they started beefing. Their problems were a little more personal because they both took serious shots at each other. But in the end, Dre still went to the hospital and made up with Eazy right before he died on March 25th, 1995. The beef with Eazy-E is the main one fans remember, but around the same time, Dre and Snoop were also beefing with another famous rap group, 2 Live Crew. Even though 2 Live Crew was best known for being part of the Miami rap scene, they actually got their start in Riverside, California. They moved to Florida after Uncle Luke, who was a DJ in Miami, heard one of their singles and wanted to work with them. They became a big part of the Miami rap scene, but some people on the West Coast didn't like how they left California and blew up somewhere else. So there was already tension, but the beef with Dre really started after 2 Live Crew went on tour with NWA. At a stop in St. Louis, Dre allegedly slept with one of the dancers that was with 2 Live Crew, which made Uncle Luke mad and caused him to leave the tour. On his next album, I Got Shit on My Mind, Uncle Luke and one of his artists, JT Money, took shots at Dre. The song Faking Like Gangsters was all about artists who try to act hard after they blew up in music. They didn't call out Dre by name, but it was obvious to fans who they were talking about. In one bar, JT Money seems to be dissing Dre for his past in the World Class Wrecking Crew, rapping, "Like niggas making love songs first, next time you see them, all they do is curse. Talking about all the niggas they kill. First they was lovers, now they trying to be real." Dre obviously felt like the track was a shot at him because he responded on Fuck With Dre Day. Dre and Snoop were way more direct and called out Uncle Luke by name, rapping, "Now understand this, my nigga Dre can't be touched. Luke's bending over, so Luke's getting fucked. Buster must have thought I was sleazy or thought I was a mark because I used to hang with Eazy. Animosity made you speak what you spoke. Ayo Dre, what up? Chip this nigga off, Loke. If it ain't another hoe that I got to fuck with, gap teeth in your mouth, so my dick's got to fit." Snoop also had a few bars for Uncle Luke on the song The Shiznit from his album Doggy Style, rapping, "I'm finna fuck a bitch. What's her name? It's Luke. You try to see me on the TV? Use a BG. D-O-double-G. Yes, I'm a OG. You can't see my homie Dr. Dre. So what the fuck a nigga like you gotta say? Gotta take a trip to the MIA and serve your ass up with a motherfucking AK." 2 Live Crew clapped back with the track Cowards in Compton, where they took the beef to the next level. Luke's artist Clay Voice took more shots at Dre's history in the World Class Wrecking Crew and rapped, "1985, you used to be a fucking prankster. Down with Lonzo and the World Class Wrecking Crew, turning off the lights and dressing like bitches too. Every nigga on death row must be a joke." He also responded directly to Snoop, rapping, "Real niggas don't follow punks down here. I guess your nigga Snoopy Dogg must be a queer. So who the fuck you gonna blast here in Miami? Fuck with me and I'll kill your whole family." JT Money also called out Dre for changing his image to fit whatever was popular, rapping, "That nigga changed gears like a 10-speed. Last album, that nigga was against weed. Now he's Mr. Chronic Man." On the NWA song, Express Yourself, Dre claimed he was against weed because it was known to cause brain damage. But then he turned around and made a whole album about smoking weed. So they were claiming Dre was just a clout chaser who did whatever he thought would help him sell records. The beef eventually turned violent after the 2 crews ran into each other at the '93 Jack the Rapper Family Affair convention in Atlanta. It's not entirely clear who was involved, and some reports say that Dre wasn't even there, but members of Death Row ran into the crew from Uncle Luke Skywalker Records, and it turned into a massive brawl. According to witnesses, knives were pulled out, shots were fired, and the vending machine was allegedly thrown off a hotel balcony. The entire convention was ruined, and Luke ended up leaving pretty bloody. Even though things got pretty serious, the beef ended there. Uncle Luke and Suge Knight met up at the Super Bowl in Miami and officially squashed the beef. According to Luke, he was already trying to arrange a sit-down before the brawl happened, but it didn't work out.
You know, I was trying to actually prevent it from escalating to that, and I call up Jill, Jack the Rapper's daughter, call up him, and I say, "Look, if these guys coming down to the convention in Atlanta, he need to schedule a sit-down so we could squash this beef, and if he don't, then these guys come down here, then it's gonna probably escalate to something real serious," which eventually it did.
Once they both realized that the situation could get deadly, both sides decided it was better to let it go, and there were no more diss songs after that. Suge may have helped Dre in his beef with 2 Live Crew, but it wouldn't take long for their relationship to fall apart. By the mid-90s, Dre was starting to realize that Suge wasn't any better than Jerry Heller. Suge promised to make Dre a boss at the label and give him complete creative control, but Suge brought a street mentality into the music game and really just wanted to steal Dre away from Jerry Heller so he could take credit for Death Row's success. Suge was known for losing his temper and abusing artists, even the big names like Dre and Snoop. He was also shady when it came to business and had all the financials under his name. Dre and Snoop realized they weren't getting paid what they were really owed, but Suge was in control of everything and wouldn't let anyone see the books. Things only started to get crazier after Suge decided to add another superstar to the label, Tupac. Suge used drama and beef to sell records, so he knew that signing Tupac would be a smart move for Death Row because Pac was so outspoken. At the time, Tupac was locked up at Clinton Correctional Facility for a sexual assault charge. Suge Knight visited him in jail and offered to pay his $3 million bail if Tupac agreed to sign with Death Row. Tupac had no choice but to accept the deal and became the newest artist signed to Death Row. After Pac got out, Suge wanted to make him look like he was the next big star on Death Row, so Suge got Dre to work with Tupac on the song California Love. California Love was a classic West Coast banger and ended up being a huge hit. It made it to #1 on the Billboard chart and stayed there for 2 weeks. It was also one of the main singles from Tupac's next album, All Eyes on Me, his first project on Death Row. All Eyes on Me was another big hit and sold over 500,000 copies in the first week. But around the same time Tupac joined the label, Dre started to fall back. Dre felt like the energy at Death Row was starting to change and that Suge was getting out of control. Death Row was full of gangbangers that Suge knew from the streets, and everyone in the rap game was afraid of them. Dre just wanted to focus on the music and didn't want to be caught up in the drama. Plus, he wasn't even getting paid what he thought he deserved. By March 1996, Dre finally had enough and decided to leave Death Row Records, even though he was a co-owner. Death Row was partnered with Interscope Records, which was run by a dude named Jimmy Iovine. Dre knew that trying to work out a deal with Suge could go left, so instead, he went straight to the top and had a meeting with Jimmy Iovine. And that's when Jimmy Iovine helped Dre start his own label, Aftermath Records. It ended up being a smart move because about 6 months later, Tupac was murdered and Death Row started to fall apart. Suge ended up getting sentenced to 9 years in prison for a parole violation, and Interscope dropped them from the label. Snoop also left Death Row in '98 to sign with Master P's No Limit Records. With Suge behind bars and all its major artists gone, Death Row completely fell apart, so Dre got out right at the perfect time. For the first time in his career, Dre was free to do whatever he wanted to do on his label. But the early days of Aftermath were pretty rough, and some fans even started to say that Dre was falling off. The first official album on the label was Dr. Dre Presents The Aftermath. It was a compilation album with all the new Aftermath artists and Dre as the executive producer. Dre handled most of the production and rapped on a few songs, but the project was mainly focused on showing off the new artists he had signed. The first single, East Coast West Coast Killers, featured Dre's new artists, RBX and Group Therapy, alongside Be Real from Cypress Hill and 2 East Coast legends, Nas and KRS-One. It was a bold statement at the time because the East Coast West Coast beef was at its peak. The second single from the album was a Dr. Dre solo track called Been There, Done That. On the song, Dre made it clear he was moving in a new direction with his sound and wasn't interested in making gangster rap anymore. On the track, Dre rapped, "I've been there and done that. You got guns? Hey yo, I got straps. A million motherfuckers on the planet Earth. Talk that hard bullshit, cause that's all they worth. No question, it's all about the DOE. So if money is the root, I want the whole damn street. Ain't trying to stick around for Illuminati. Got to buy my own island by the year 2G. Fans respected the move, but the music wasn't hitting the same as his early stuff. Even though Dr. Dre Presents The Aftermath ended up going platinum, fans weren't rocking with it like they did his other projects. It didn't have close to the same impact as The Chronic, and none of Dre's early artists went mainstream, so the album was pretty quickly forgotten. Dre realized that he needed to work with bigger names if he wanted to keep people's attention, so he decided to put together a group with Nas called The Firm. The Firm was made up of Nas, Foxy Brown, AZ, and Cormega, with production from Dre and the Ticketmasters. Cormega was later kicked out of the group because he didn't get along with Nas, and he was replaced by another rapper from Queensbridge named Nature. The Firm had a lot of hype after they all worked together on the track Affirmative Action from Nas' second album, It Was Written. All the rappers had a major buzz at the time, and with a legend like Dr. Dre behind them, most fans thought The Firm was about to be the next big thing in rap. Dre wanted to fall back and focus on production and developing artists instead of rapping. The this was his chance to prove he could turn other artists into stars. But when the firm dropped their first project, the album, it was a major disappointment. Fans were expecting a grimy East Coast gangster rap album like what they heard on Affirmative Action. Even though the lyrics were mostly about crime and the street life, the production sounded more like pop or R&B. Fans felt like the vibe was totally off, and they were trying too hard to make a hit record instead of making a classic hip-hop album. So, the album was a flop, and the firm broke up so everyone could focus on their own careers. Around the same time, there were rumors that Dr. Dre had fallen off completely. He hadn't made a classic album since he left Death Row, and rumors were flying that Aftermath was having financial problems. Dre was at a low point and his new style wasn't catching on, so Dre knew he needed to go in a completely different direction. Everything started to change after Jimmy Iovine played him a demo tape of a white rapper from Detroit, and Dre realized he found his next big artist. In '97, Eminem went out to LA to perform at the Rap Olympics after he was convicted and fired from his job. Eminem had just released a Slim Shady EP, but didn't have any buzz yet outside of the underground Detroit rap scene. Eminem came in second at the Rap Olympics and lost to a rapper named Otherwise, but it still ended up being a huge moment in Eminem's career because an intern from Interscope Records named Dean Geislinger saw him perform and asked M for his demo tape after the show. Dean was so impressed by Eminem's lyrical skill that he passed the demo tape to his boss, Jimmy Iovine. Jimmy was also blown away by Eminem's raw talent, so he played the tape for Dr. Dre. At first, Dre wasn't sure if a white dude from Detroit would be accepted in hip-hop, but as soon as he pressed play, Dre realized he was wrong and that he needed to sign Eminem to Aftermath immediately. Dre invited Eminem to come back to LA and work on music. M was a huge fan of NWA growing up and couldn't believe that a legend like Dre would want to work with him, but they hit it off from the jump. During their first studio session, they recorded Eminem's first hit, My Name Is. My Name Is was an instant classic and started climbing up the Billboard charts. Dre knew Eminem was going to be a star, so they started working on M's new album immediately. The Slim Shady LP came out in 1999 and turned Eminem into an overnight celebrity. Dr. Dre produced 3 tracks and rapped on 2 of them. With Eminem's crazy new style and Dre's production skills, the Slim Shady LP was a huge success and made it to number 2 on the Billboard chart. It was a big win for Aftermath Records and proved that Dre didn't fall off. The album was pretty controversial because of Eminem's lyrics, which are full of references to drugs and violence. But by that point, Dre was used to being criticized by the media, so it didn't hold him back. The same year, Dre dropped his second solo album, 2001. On 2001, Dre went back to the G-Funk and gangster rap sound that made him popular. It was meant to be a sequel to The Chronic and featured appearances from Snoop Dogg, Exhibit, Eminem, Kurupt, Nate Dogg, and more. 2001 was another huge hit and made it to number 2 on the Billboard chart. Even though 2001 was an important album for Los Angeles, it almost started a beef with another West Coast legend, DJ Quick. On the track, What's the Difference?, Dre rapped, "Then I got these fake ass niggas I first blew with, claiming they non-violent, talking like they spit venom in interviews, speaking on reunions, move units, then talk shit, and we can do this. Until then, I ain't even speaking your name. Just keep my name out of your mouth and we can keep it the same. It ain't that I'm too big to listen to the rumors." One theory was Dre was dissing other members of NWA who wanted to try to plan a reunion, but at that point, Dre had already made up with other members of NWA and even name-dropped Eazy-E, Ice Cube, and MC Ren on the same song, so he clearly wasn't talking about them. Another theory was that he was talking about DJ Quick, who came up in Compton around the same time and also signed to Death Row in the 90s. Around the time 2001 dropped, DJ Quick had been talking about organizing an NWA reunion. So years later, he admitted in an interview that he felt like Dre was talking about him on What's the Difference. A few months later, DJ Quick dropped a song called You Ain't Fresh with Cam and Eric Sermon. Even though he doesn't mention Dr. Dre by name, DJ Quick later confirmed it was about him. On the track, Quick rapped, "I know you like to do ecstasy and then forget where you are. Be up in a room with a stripper and your homie Lamar. Now that's a nasty threesome, a straight mismatch. Instead of banging on the broad, you'd rather open his hatch." He also took a shot at Dre for ghost producing and taking credit for beats he didn't make, rapping, "The number 23 on the beats, about to do you. Mr. Blake, aka DJ Quick, talking to you. And I'll prove I'm clever and your game is whack with one line. I'll never put my name on a track that wasn't mine." But before Dre had a chance to respond, Exhibit stepped in and ended the beef. Exhibit told DJ Quick that he was tripping and that Dre wasn't even dissing him on What's the Difference. Dre probably didn't even realize at the time that You Ain't Fresh was about him, so they ended up getting on a call and worked things out before anything got really serious. And after the beef was squashed, Dre and DJ Quick linked up in the studio for the track Put It On Me. After 2001 blew up, Dre proved that he didn't fall off and could still make classic records. But around the same time, he decided to fall back from dropping his own music so he could focus on producing and running the label. Aftermath kept dropping classics with Eminem's next album, the Marshall Mathers LP. Dre worked on 6 songs from the album, including the hit single, The Real Slim Shady. The Marshall Mathers LP set a record for the fastest selling rap album of all time and sold over 1.7 million copies in the first week. It also won a Grammy, and fans are calling it an instant classic. Dre also executive produced Eminem's third album, The Eminem Show, and made the beats for 3 songs. The album dropped in 2002 and sold over 280,000 copies in the first day. It eventually became the best-selling hip-hop album of all time. Eminem became the hottest rapper in the game, and Dre proved that he could turn underground rappers into superstars. So Dre decided to start looking for the next artist to sign to Aftermath, which is around the time he first heard about 50 Cent. Dre discovered 50 Cent through Eminem. 50's lawyer had a relationship with Eminem's manager, Paul Rosenberg. Through that connection, 50 gave Eminem his mixtape, Guess Who's Back. Eminem was busy working on a new album at the time and didn't listen to it right away. But as soon as he heard it, Eminem knew 50 was about to blow up. 50 flew out to LA to meet Dre, and the next day, he signed a $1 million deal with Aftermath, Interscope, and Shady Records and got to work on his debut album. Dr. Dre was the executive producer of 50's album, Get Rich or Die Trying, and produced 3 tracks, including the hit single, In the Club. In the Club blew up and made 50 a superstar overnight. When Get Rich or Die Trying finally dropped, it sold over 870,000 copies in the first week and shot to #1 on the Billboard chart. Get Rich or Die Trying ended up being the best-selling album of 2003, after The Eminem Show was the top album of 2002. So Aftermath was dominating the charts and dropping classic albums every year. After that, Dre executive produced Eminem's 4th album, Encore. He got even more involved in the music and produced 8 out of the 20 songs. Encore went triple platinum and sold over 11 million copies, but it got pretty mixed reviews. A lot of fans thought it wasn't as good as his early stuff, and even Eminem admits it's one of his worst albums. At the time, Eminem was addicted to prescription drugs and a bunch of songs leaked online. M had to rush to the studio to record new material, and what came out was pretty rushed and didn't match the quality of his last 3 albums. So after Encore, Eminem decided to take some time off from music and get his life together. At the same time, Dre started building hype for his new artist, The Game. At first, The Game was signed to an indie label called Get Low Records that was run by Bay Area rapper JT the Bigger Figure. The Game made a mixtape called QB to Compton and was hustling it all over LA and the Bay Area. Someone passed the tape to Dr. Dre, and he immediately liked what he heard. So Dre invited The Game to the studio while 50 Cent was working on Get Rich or Die Trying and offered him a deal with Aftermath. Dre could tell that The Game had the potential to be a big star, but he needed a way to introduce him to the public and build hype. So Dre came up with the idea to make The Game the newest member of 50's crew, G-Unit. 50 was one of the biggest stars in hip-hop after Get Rich or Die Trying dropped. G-Unit was also one of the hottest groups after they dropped a hit record called Beg for Mercy. On paper, it made perfect sense for The Game to join the group so he could get some exposure before dropping a solo album. But Dre probably didn't realize how competitive 50 Cent was and had no idea that he was about to start one of the most legendary beefs in rap history. At first, everything went according to plan. The Game started building a buzz by doing features on G-Unit mixtapes. Then in 2005, The Game dropped his debut album, The Documentary, which was executive produced by Dre and 50 Cent. Dre worked on 8 songs from the album, and 50 rapped on 3 tracks, including the hit record, Hate It or Love It. The Documentary was another win for Aftermath and debuted at #1 on the Billboard chart after selling over 500,000 copies in the first week. But even though it was a hit, The Documentary was the only record that The Game dropped on Aftermath. 50 and The Game were having problems behind the scenes, even before The Documentary dropped. At that point, 50 was beefing with half the rap game and wanted everyone in G-Unit to back him up. At first, The Game was cool with going at some of 50's enemies and even dissed Ja Rule while he was beefing with G-Unit. But when 50 started going at rappers like Nas, Jadakiss, and Fat Joe, The Game decided to fall back. The Game had respect for all of them, and there wasn't any personal beef. So he made it clear he wasn't gonna diss them just because 50 was. But 50 expected absolute loyalty from everyone in his crew and felt like The Game stabbed him in the back by not taking his side. 50 went on Hot 97 and announced that The Game had been kicked out of G-Unit. Then, one of The Game's homies ended up taking a shot in the leg after they tried to rush the studio and confront 50. After that, 50 and The Game started dissing each other on songs and in interviews. They were both still signed to Aftermath, which made the situation even worse. Then everything really fell apart when the game started using the catchphrase "G you not" to clown 50 for being fake tough. Dr. Dre realized that he wasn't able to stop them from beefing, so someone had to go. Even though Dre discovered the game, he'd known 50 longer, and 50 was still the bigger star. So Dre made the tough decision to drop the game from Aftermath and transfer him to a different label on Interscope. After that, Dre fell back from discovering new talent and focused on producing. He worked on 50's second album, The Massacre, which was another hit for Aftermath. Dre also stayed busy by producing for other legends, including Busta Rhymes on The Big Bag, Jay-Z on Kingdom Come, and Snoop Dogg on The Blue Carpet. In 2007, Dre announced he was working on his next solo record, Detox, which was supposed to be his final studio album. There was a lot of hype around Detox, and fans thought it had the potential to be another classic. But Dre kept pushing back the release date so he could focus on producing. Eminem made a comeback in 2009 with the album Recovery, which was almost entirely produced by Dr. Dre. Relapse was a pretty big hit and sold over 600,000 copies in the first week. It still got mixed reviews compared to his early music, but a lot of hardcore Eminem fans loved it. The same year, Dre also produced a few tracks on 50 Cent's project, Before I Self-Destruct, which also got mixed reviews and didn't sell as well compared to his early stuff. After that, 50 decided to leave Aftermath over issues with the label. He blamed the low sales on his albums getting pushed back too many times, although he stayed cool with Dre and thanked him for everything he'd done for his career. With 50 and Eminem's albums done, Dre decided it was finally time to drop Detox. He started building hype by announcing a lead single with Jay-Z called Under Pressure, but the track ended up leaking online and fans weren't that impressed. So Dre announced that the single and any other leaked tracks weren't going to be on Detox. Instead, he dropped 2 official singles, Kush with Snoop Dogg and Akon, and I Need a Doctor with Eminem and Skylar Grey. It seemed like Detox might actually be coming soon, but fans waited and waited with no official release date. By that point, Aftermath as a label wasn't even close to what it was in the early 2000s. 50 was gone, and Eminem was already 10 years into his career. Dre hadn't created any new superstars since the game, and it seemed like he didn't know how to find new talent anymore. That was until he announced he was working with a new up-and-coming artist from LA named Kendrick Lamar. Dr. Dre discovered Kendrick after listening to one of his mixtapes, Overly Dedicated. A lot of people have been telling Dre about Kendrick, including J. Cole. Dre brought Cole to the studio to work on Detox, and asked him what young artist from LA he should tap in with. Cole told him there was this kid from Compton named Kendrick Lamar who's about to blow up, and that Dre should sign him to Aftermath. When Dre finally got around to listening to the music, he realized Cole was right. Dre was immediately impressed by how Kendrick spoke in interviews, and when he finally heard his music, he was blown away. So he reached out to Kendrick and invited him to work on Detox with him and Snoop. At the time, Kendrick was still just a hype man for his homie J-Rock from TDE, but the first time he got in the studio with Dr. Dre was the moment Kendrick knew he made it. Right after they met each other, Dre put on the beat and told Kendrick to write a verse for it. Dre knew he found his next superstar, so he signed Kendrick to a joint deal with Aftermath and Interscope. Not long after signing Kendrick, Dre announced that he was taking a break from music after working on his album. Even though he still hadn't dropped Detox, Dre was too focused on growing his headphone company, Beats by Dre. Dr. Dre started Beats by Dre in 2006 with Jimmy Iovine, and a few years later, HTC bought half the company for over $300 million. So Dre felt like he needed to take a step back from music to focus on the headphone game. It ended up being a smart move, because only a few years later, Apple bought Beats by Dre for over $3 billion. Before stepping back from music completely, Dre did work on Kendrick's second album, Good Kid, Mad City, and hopped in the booth for the tracks Compton and a bonus track called The Recipe. Good Kid, Mad City was another instant classic and made Kendrick one of the biggest names in rap. Even though Dre wasn't really focused on music anymore, he proved that he could still discover new artists and really help them blow up. Over the years, fans started to lose hope that Detox was ever going to drop because Dre kept pushing back the release date. Artists close to him like 50 Cent and Snoop said in interviews that Dre was way too focused on building his business empire to work on new music. Dre was also a perfectionist, and even though he already recorded close to 40 tracks for the album, Dre felt like none of them were good enough and he kept starting over. Detox has still never dropped, but fans did get one last album from Dre. In 2015, Dre announced he was dropping his final project, Compton, which was meant to be a soundtrack for the NWA movie, Straight Outta Compton. Dre was one of the producers of the movie, along with Ice Cube, and it gave him the idea to scrap Detox and make a whole new album instead. This time, Dre stuck to it and dropped Compton in August 2015. The project featured a lot of the artists he worked with over the years, including Kendrick, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, The Game, and Exhibit. It sold close to 300,000 copies in the first week and was a hit with the fans and critics. So it was the perfect way for Dre to end his career as a solo artist and show fans he could still drop a solid album, even after being in the game for nearly 30 years. Straight Outta Compton not only inspired Dre to finally drop a new album, it also finally brought down one of his biggest enemies, Suge Knight. Ever since Death Row fell apart, Suge had been in and out of jail for probation violations and random assaults. The final straw was in 2015, when Suge ran over a dude after a fight on the set of Straight Outta Compton. Suge was upset because he wasn't involved in the making of the film, and they were using his image in the movie without paying him. Suge kept showing up to the studio wanting to talk to the producers, but he kept getting turned away. No one wanted to deal with the drama that Suge always brought, especially Dr. Dre, who had a restraining order against Suge. So Dre told Universal Studios to not let Suge anywhere near the set. Suge still kept showing up, and on January 29, 2015, he got into an argument with security. Clee Bone Sloan, who was an actor best known for his role in the Denzel Washington movie Training Day, was working at site security and as a location scout. Bone was also an affiliate of the Bloods and didn't get along with Suge Knight. Bone told Suge that he had to leave the set, and they started arguing. Suge then called his friend Terry Carter, who came up with Suge in Compton, but also worked closely with Ice Cube. Terry Carter was trying to bring Suge and Dr. Dre back together and thought he could smooth things over. So Terry agreed to meet with Suge and Bone at a local burger joint nearby to work things out. Suge met up with Terry in the parking lot of Tam's Burgers a few blocks from the set, and things started out peaceful. But as soon as Bone showed up, he started attacking Suge's car, trying to get him to come out. Instead of getting out to fight, Suge backed up and ran Bone with his truck, then ran him over in the parking lot. Terry Carter also got out to try to stop Suge, but that turned out to be a huge mistake because Suge hit him too. Terry ended up dying, and Bone suffered major head injuries. Security footage captured the whole thing, and Suge claimed he acted in self-defense. Maybe if Suge didn't have such a bad reputation and history of violence, he might have had a case. But in the end, Suge pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 28 years in prison. So it seems like Dre was right all along and not wanting Suge anywhere near the set. Since then, Dre has continued to produce and work with new talent here and there. In 2018, he produced 4 songs on Anderson .Paak's album Oxnard, and in 2020, he was the executive producer for Eminem's album Music to Be Murdered By. But by that point, Dre had already made it to legend status and didn't have much else to prove. In 2022, Dre performed during the halftime show at Super Bowl 56 and brought out all his artists including Snoop Dogg, Eminem, 50 Cent, Mary J. Blige, Anderson .Paak, and Kendrick. The performance was a huge hit and even won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Performance. Dre has already accomplished so much in music that there isn't much left for him to do. He's already made so many smart investments that he doesn't really need the money. Dre's current net worth in 2024 is estimated to be around $500 million. As a co-founder of Aftermath, he still earns royalties from the classic albums he produced for Eminem, 50 Cent, and Kendrick, and his own music too. He's also a successful movie producer. Straight Outta Compton made over $200 million at the box office, and Dre also produced the HBO documentary series, The Defiant Ones. But his most successful project is probably Beats by Dre. When Apple bought the company for $3 billion in 2014, it came with a bunch of Apple stock that helped add to Dre's net worth and put him closer to billionaire status. Over the years, he also got into the real estate game and has homes all over Los Angeles and Malibu, which are valued at about $80 million. Dre has also given back and spends a lot of his money on charity. In 2022, Dre donated $100 million to help build a new campus for Compton High School. In 2013, Dre and Jimmy Iovine also donated $70 million to USC for the creation of the Jimmy Iovine and Andre Young Academy for Arts, Technology, and the Business of Innovation. From creating the sound of West Coast gangster rap to discovering some of the most influential artists in music history, Dr. Dre has had a pretty amazing career. It wasn't always easy, and he had to overcome a lot of shady record deals and bad publicity to get to where he is today. But Dr. Dre will still go down in history as one of the most important producers of all time and made more classic records than probably any other producer in music history.